Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Weber County Commission meeting. We're glad you've chosen to arrange your time to be here. Sylvia, especially you, welcome. I always like calling people out, and besides, when I call you out, it makes Josh Gard feel much more at ease. So, speaking of Josh Gard, he's going to give our Pledge of Allegiance this morning. Today is Tuesday, August 15th. Seated to my immediate right is Commissioner Sharon Bolos. Excused today is Commissioner Gage Frohr. Our Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Josh Gard, Chief Josh Gard at the Sheriff's Office. Our invocation will be given by Sean Wilkinson, and then I'll have the thought of the day. We'll go to that point. Josh.
Audience, please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee this morning, we thank thee for the beauty that surrounds us, for this place where we live. We're grateful for those who do so much to make this a safe place and a place where we have opportunities to learn, to recreate, and to enjoy life. We recognize that there are also some hard things going on, and here in our community as well as around the world, and we pray that there may be a spirit of peace, a spirit of unity, and that we can all do our part to make things better. We're grateful for the abundance of water that we've received this year, grateful that our reservoirs are still full, and pray that we may make good use of that resource. Again, we thank thee for the good things that we have, and pray that each of us may go about doing good in our own way. And we ask for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Sorry. My thought today deals with our Weber County Fair. We enjoyed a wonderful fair that concluded on Saturday evening. It always takes place, and our Weber County Fair always ends on the second Saturday of each year, of August of each year. You know, I had some people make some comments this year, and they said, you know, boy, the fair's really changed. The fairs should be da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Maybe, I don't know specifically, but I remember I started at the fairgrounds in 1994, 30 years ago. This was my 30th fair to attend. You know, back then, during the fair, we didn't have a riding arena. That was all paved parking lot. We had only 363 stalls at the time, where we now have 549. But we had, during that time back then, we had a miniature horse show. We also had a quarter horse show. We had a draft horse show. We had an Arabian horse show. And we even had a stallion alley for the stallions to come. And there were so many members of the community that would bring animals and support those different activities. Back then, premiums were such that people would come and they'd make a little premium for bringing their animal and showing it at the fair. You know, it's interesting, if you contrast 30 years ago with today, since that time over the last 30 years, I remember specifically Stallion Alley. It was about 3 or 4 years later. Just the number of people that wanted to come and participate or really the number of people that, the number of farms that had stallions had reduced. What happens is a lot of times in our county, in fact, it's important to note back in 1995, Weber County had more horses per capita than any other county in the United States. And now, we're just a mere bleep on the radar. And what's happened? There's been change. Many of the farms and the big horse properties have been sold. A lot of times, as people become older, that's a lot of work to maintain animals and farms of that size. And so people come in and offer them money, and sometimes that's more attractive than all the work ahead to maintain those things. And so the number of parcels that had horses have gone down a long ways. Of course, we know that 60 or 70% of our new growth happens with our own kids. Our kids need a place to live, and so there are houses in many areas now where there used to be horses. And so things have changed. The number of miniature horses continued to go down, quarter horses. We still enjoy today an all-breed horse show, which all of those things can come into one show. But the number of people in those respective disciplines or those respective shows have changed. They've reduced. It's dramatically changed. And it's funny, you know, we have a fantastic fair team. We have a wonderful fair board, and they keep current. That's unique, because in the United States today, if you talk about the IAFE, the International Association of Fairs and Exhibitors, have reported that fairs, on average, are down 32.7% in attendance. Now, if you're running a business, how can you continue to operate a business if you're down 32.7% since 2017? That's even before COVID. So the fair that we remember from days gone by, and for me from 30 years ago, has changed. It's just not the same. Let me tell you, though, a couple of highlights that I can tell you about that our fair enjoyed this year. And by the way, last year our fair was up 6%. This year, the one that just ended Saturday, was up 7+%. I'm really excited about that. We're not down the national average, but our numbers continue to climb. We buck the trend. Our fair board and fair team bucks the trend because of the things they do. And let me tell you some of the exciting things that went on there. We had a Weber rodeo. Years ago, that used to take place in an outdoor Cream of Weber arena. And they had, in that Cream of Weber arena, we boasted that we had 1,600 seats, approximately 1,600 seats there. And that was half, three-quarters full. So 1,000, 1,200 people would come to that rodeo, and it was a great event. This year, our stadium on Wednesday night with our Weber rodeo was more than half full, probably three-quarters full, and it holds 4,000. So the attendance is double, maybe triple of what it was in that Weber rodeo. They recognized, our team recognizes that that's still a viable thing that they do. Another thing I want to highlight too is they also brought in a thing called bull fighters only. Many of you have watched as bulls go out at a rodeo, and then there's the guys, the clowns on the ground that deflect the bull once the rider's off the back of the bull. They get the bull away from the rider so the rider can get up and exit the arena safely. But then they put their life in peril trying to get that bull away. Now, that bullfighters only is, I don't think any of those guys would be poster children for risk management. I mean, talk about guys that go and get a thrill from getting hooked and thrown in the air and trying to decide if they're going to do a single front flip or a double back flip in the air. I mean, it's just absolutely so exciting. It was televised too, seen around the world, and again, at least three-quarters full, 3,000 or so people. Our demolition derby sold out 5-6 weeks in advance, and so there's 4,000 people. We've had demolition derby. I remember it was the second year in 1995 we held demolition derby. It was held out in the infield of the racetrack, and we got bleachers from all over the county, set them around the outside curve of the track, and we probably had about 2,000 people. But that Derby continues to get more and more exciting. I know people were coming from central Utah and southern Idaho, western Wyoming, eastern Nevada to come and see our fair, our demolition derby. The number of vendors have changed. You know, a lot of people buy stuff online. Going to a fair, going to a home show, a home and garden show, all that stuff's changed because of the way we do business. It's just all changed. So the number of vendors has changed. We had some other great acts there. We always, back from 30 years ago, had a difficult time introducing people to the people how to get back to the barns. How do we attract the people to go back to the barns so they can see all the livestock, the goats and the hogs and the lambs and the steers back there? And this year they had a bounce house that was, holy mackerel. If it was 100 by 300, I think I'm being conservative. One of the largest bounce house things I've not even seen pictures that big. Just wonderful attractions back there, but a petting zoo with zebras and kangaroos, but also horse rides and things like that. It made it super easy and friendly. Our chicken shows are up. They had a rabbit show on their own. It just was a really good experience. One of the other things I wanted to comment on too was how successful the Junior Livestock Show was. The prices, the floor prices, not floor price, but the price for sold animal was good. I know that the sales numbers are not released yet, but I know that they were comparable with the all-time high that Weber County had. Total sales and booths were $1.2 million last year. And the sales without the booths are about equivalent to where they were last year. So there are just so many positive things at the fair because there's so many people that care. I'm really grateful to our staff who've made the changes. The fair is something that I like. I miss Stallion Alley. I miss some of the draft horse things. But I'm grateful that we took those premiums of the draft horse show where there was maybe 20 or 30 people seeing that draft horse show because the draft horses couldn't go at any other time. They didn't want to go. They wouldn't go. They wouldn't conform. So the numbers kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we turn it into things like bullfighters only, where 3,000 plus people can attend. It's just a really, really wonderful thing. I know that our other areas, I remember Todd, you were involved there by donating a bow, making sure that the archery park was healthy. We cross-utilize our place. It just feels it's a good feel-good. Another thing, just as we look about change, you don't have to look far, and maybe my observations are off. But Commissioner Ebert taught me that it's important to look at people's shoes for one reason or another. And I looked at people's shoes at the fair this year. In 1994, about all I saw was cowboy boots. This year, about all I saw was Hey Dudes, or Crocs, or slippers. Things have changed. 30 years have morphed into different things. We're different in Weber County than we were 30 years ago. I'm grateful that our team has adapted because I love still going out to the county fair. And those are my thoughts today. A little long-winded, but I wanted to share those. Commissioner Bolus, I know you were there and attended quite a few other events. Anything you'd like to comment on?
I agree and echo your sentiments that it was a wonderful event. And honestly, Commissioner Harvey, I can't think of anyone better to be on the thought of the day following the fair. Thanks for the history lesson.
Thank you. Okay. Well, that's it for the thought today. We're going to move on to item E like echo on our agenda, which is the public comments. Are there anyone in the auditorium today or anyone online, Shelley, that would like to leave comments? No online. Seeing none in our auditorium, then we're going to move to item F, our consent items. Our consent items are as follows. The first, number one, is a request for approval of warrants 8680 to 8723 and 478351 through and including 478545 and 283 in the amount of $932,940.25. Item two is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $42,274.88. And then I'm going to have Mr. Hatch, if you would comment on those items there, please.
Yes, just one moment.
You know, that's
I think
really
they're
not,
making fun of you.
that's not amusing. little disappointed you didn't tighten up the spring in the back of the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have to issue a big apology after not being here last week. I am very sorry that I am not Jason Horn. I understand that he provided and watched that he provided some excellent entertainment. So I'd try to be like him, but I'd have to dye my hair, part it down the middle, shave a little bit, and lose 50 pounds. So, and become way cooler. So I just can't do that. But on to the purchase orders and warrants. We issued 8 purchase orders this week for $42,000. 41% of that amount, or $17,000, is for the transfer station, which was or will be for repairs to the forklift as well as the truck's scale. 33%, or $14,000, was for the sheriff to purchase firearms and ammunition. As far as checks, we issued 240 warrants this week for $933,000. A quarter of that amount, $234,000, is for the Justice Center architectural services regarding the Justice Center. 12%, or $113,000, is for the jail to purchase evidence lockers, culinary supplies, as well as training and travel. 8%, or $70,000, is for road construction, the 12th Street project, 4th segment, and that's paid for with the transportation tax funds that have been approved by the Weber Area Council of Government. We had 2 items at 7%, or just under $70,000. One was for the paramedic fund to purchase a truck. The other one is for the health department, which were pass-through grant payments to Weber Human Services, United Way, and Seeger Memorial Clinic. And that concludes my report.
Great. Commissioner Bolos, any questions on any of those?
No.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, which is the summary of warrants and purchase orders that were just read by Mr. Hatch. Item 4 is a request for approval of ACH payments to Zions Bank in the amount of $96,950.82. Item 5 is a request for approval to ratify a contract by and between Weber County and Brian Cochran to hire Ogden's high school basketball team to provide janitorial services during the 2023 Weber County Fair, and they did a great job. Item 6 is a request for approval to ratify a contract by and between Weber County and Drivebox Utah to hire Drivebox Utah to have an exhibit at the 2023 Weber County Fair. Item 7 is a request for approval to ratify a contract by and between Weber County and Big Air Insanity Freestyle Motocross Show for a motocross stunt show to be held at the 2023 Weber County Fair. And the reason this is, Commissioner, I know this particular contract was only let just days before the fair itself. So item 8 is a request for approval of a retirement agreement by and between Weber County and Michelle Cook. Item 9 is a request for approval of an amendment to sub-receipt agreement with Ogden Nature Center for American Rescue Plan Act SLFRF funds. And that, Commissioner, concludes our consent items. Any questions?
No, you ready for a motion?
Yes, thank you.
Make a motion to approve consent items F1 through 9.
I'll make a second on that and then call for action. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. The consent items are approved as read and presented on the contract. Our action items today, G1 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and BML Construction Services to relocate a sculpture base and electrical supply, add security lighting and camera to protect the Southwest Library site from ongoing vandalism, remove the original base, and remediate landscaping. Our library director, Linda Wingsgard. Go ahead, Ms. Wingsgard.
Thank you, Commissioners. I think that introduction well covers the extent of the contract. To drill down just a little bit, you may recall, I know Commissioner Harvey recalls that UTA added a major transit stop on the south side of the library, and the footprint fell within a couple of feet of the base for this sculpture, which is 10, 15 feet tall, metal, architecturally lit, on a concrete base. A work of art that was commissioned with private funding to celebrate the rededication of the main library. Well, the sculpture was completed and installed by the artist. Has major public commissions throughout the United States and abroad. And with this construction transit stop being so close to the sculpture, it's created an opportunity for idle hands to view it more as monkey bars and a climbing challenge than a work of art, which of course invites risk and vandalism. So the sculpture will be moved to the southwest corner of the building on the raised platform by the retaining wall in order to eliminate the risk, and the concrete base that's currently on will also be removed. Other site improvements covered in this agreement include running electrical and data connections to a new outdoor lighting pole to facilitate video surveillance on the southwest corner of the property. There's currently no library lighting in this area and no video surveillance, which also invites mischief. For example, the sprinkler heads along the sidewalk get kicked off as people walk there in the early morning hours. The agreement includes some remediation to the landscaping in the area, and the contract with BML is for the low bid. We had 3 very competent bidders. Bids ranged from a high of $188,000 to the $117,077 proposed by BML. So with that background, we're seeking your approval to enter into this agreement and to move forward.
Great. Sitting on the library board, I've been briefed on this. Commissioner Bolos, any questions?
I don't have any.
I'll entertain a motion then.
Make a motion to approve the contract by and between Weaver County and BML Construction Services as presented.
Great. I'll second that motion. Call for action. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Waingscott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Our next item 2 is a request for approval of the first reading of an ordinance of the County Commissioners of Weber County amending certain fees to Weber County Parks and Recreation Department. Our presenter is our Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Todd Ferrario.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
This is a oops. We went through a lot of iterations in background and trying to fix some fee ordinances last year, and the yurts were part of that. By the time we got to the end, we had missed, I'd like to blame the attorneys, but it was us. We missed the change on the yurt pricing. So this affects the summer rate from 80 to 85, and the winter rate goes from 125 to 150. The winter rate is obviously substantially more. The maintenance in last winter, digging it out for use, was quite a chore. So we put this back on the board to go through approval process due to us missing it in the final draft.
You're also running at a pretty high level of occupancy in the winter as well, right?
Yeah, wintertime is actually our best time in the yurts. They get quite warm. They're beautiful, and they do have some pretty good tree coverage on 2 of the 3 of them, but once you get to middle of July through about the end of August, it's hot. So our shoulder seasons are good in the summertime, but winter is phenomenal. They have great wood-burning stoves in there. You ski or snowshoe in. It is a really cool addition to the park. And they survived 14 feet of snow, which was pretty surprising. They were buried.
Well done. They're well constructed and well done. Any questions about this, Commissioner?
No.
Great. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance of County Commissioners of Weber County amending certain fees to Weber County Parks and Recreation Department facilities.
I'll second that motion. Are any questions? Any other questions? If not, I'll place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ferrari.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Cal Wadsworth Construction for the construction and demolition materials loading area for the Weber County Transfer Station. Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioners, this is a contract with Cal Wadsworth Construction to relocate our construction and demolition area at the transfer station. So it will move from where it is just west of the administration building down to the south side of the transfer station, where just very near where we load the trucks and trailers that haul our waste. So if you've ever been to the transfer station, we would call it around the backside, but it's on the south of the tipping floor building. So that will provide for a much better flow. It'll definitely provide some safety in removing the C&D from where it currently is. So we look forward to getting this done. This is phase one of that project. In the future, we're hoping to build a new scale house and provide some new roads and improve the circulation at the transfer station. But that will come as funding allows in future years.
Thank you. Commissioner Bolus, any questions?
No.
Couple of questions for me.
Yes.
That'll enlarge or possibly enlarge the staging area for people to get ready to hit the scale house. That's the first thing.
Yes.
By going around the back or the south area, that's going to be in more or less a proximity of where the tracks were that were removed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And once the people offload their C and D, how will they then transfer back to the scale? Will they go do a complete circle around there where they're now going in between the commercial traffic? How does that?
So they can go either way. They can go back out, or they can go around to the north, if you will. Well, I guess they go to the north either way, but to the east and then north. Either way, they will be guided by our workers out there. We will provide the safe route. So there are two different plans for how that might work, and depending on what we have going on that day, it could change on a day-to-day basis. So that will be managed by the transfer station, and we'll make sure that it's safe.
Very good. No questions, others, so I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract by and between Weber County and Cal Wadsworth Construction as presented.
Second, and place that motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Tally ho.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and item number 4 under our action items is by Chief Josh Guard. It's a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and LensLock to replace the outdated body and dash cameras with new equipment and move from the site server storage to evidence to a cloud-based storage. Mr. Guard, Chief Guard, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. So this kind of came as an urgent need and a problem for us. We started purchasing these cameras, body cams and dash cams 5 years ago, and have just kind of purchased so many every year. We're running into a problem now with our on-site server storage. The company that provides it is not very helpful. And a lot of 90% of our dash and body cameras are now out of warranty, which we're going to have to start purchasing to replace them. So kind of an urgent need. So working with the commission, Scott Park and Liam from the County Attorney's Office were a big help in this, in getting this contract put forward. This will allow us to replace 59 dash cameras in all of our vehicles and I believe 60-something body cameras for the deputies. Put us on kind of a 5-year plan where we get new body cameras in 30 months with this company. There's a warranty and it puts all of our equipment under warranty. And our biggest issue right now that our IT is facing is the server issues and the storage and getting videos downloaded to go to the county attorney's office and fulfill grandma requests. This will take all of that, put it into the cloud server. They'll also migrate our old data over to the cloud server as well, making it much easier for us to fill those requests and reducing some employee hours spent pulling videos.
Great. Commissioner Bolus, the sheriff's in your portfolio. Any question or comment?
Just a comment, Chief Guard, thanks for your research on this. I know when you came to us, it felt like it was an urgent need and went back and did some research for us and helping us feel good about moving forward a little sooner maybe than we wanted to, and ended up getting us a good deal. So I appreciate your work in that.
Thank you.
Great. If there's no other questions, I'll
Wanna make-
entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the contract by and between Weber County and LensLock as presented.
I'll second that motion. And with that, place the motion for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Chief, there you
Thank you,
go.
Commissioners.
Thank you. Item H now on our agenda is a public hearing. I'll request a motion to adjourn our public meeting and convene a public hearing.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We're now in a public hearing. This is a public hearing to discuss the amendments to the operating and capital budget of Weber County for the 2023 calendar year. Our comptroller for Weber County, Mr. Scott Park. Mr. Park, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. These are, so just a quick history on this. We set our operating budget, in advance of the year, and then it becomes necessary during the year to make a couple minor tweaks and adjustments, and we try to do that on a quarterly basis. These amendments have been reviewed by the Commissioners and signed off on by at least 2 Commissioners in every instance, and we also presented a summary of this back in a work session, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so now we are just going over and requesting formal approval of these budget changes. Just a quick summary of what they are. We have several several new grants that we've received for about $530,000, so we're asking permission to spend this new revenue. We've also had a couple of adjustments. We had to appropriate about $500,000 for some fuel tanks out at the county road shop, and some rollover of equipment funds that we had budgeted to spend in the prior year, but due to supply chain issues, we didn't actually get the equipment until this year, and that was about another $400,000. So if you have any specific questions on any of the items, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I'd ask that we approve the changes to the budget.
Great, thank you. In as much as this is a public hearing, do you have any comments before we go to the public?
I don't.
Great. Terrific. We're going to go to the next item, Mr. Park. Very well done. Our next, Mr. Burton, this is a public hearing to consider approval of an ordinance and development agreement to apply a master plan development overlay zone on 257 acres of property zoned RE15, RE20, FR3, F5, CVR-1, and AV-3. The project is located near 3718 North Wolf Creek Drive in Eden, with a ZMA of 2022-01.2. Our presenter, Mr. Burton, go ahead, please. Mr. Burton.
Yep. Good morning, Commissioners. I'll take a few minutes and go over this rezone proposal with you. There is a lot to it. I know you're pretty familiar with it. We've had several work sessions with you over the past few months about this, but feel free to stop me and ask me questions at any point, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. Before you, as mentioned, is a request to apply a master plan development overlay zone on 257 acres in the Eden Wolf Creek area. The applicant is listed as John Lewis, and this application was originally submitted back in January of 2022. As you're well aware, sometimes we get rezone applications in, and the developers are, they want a decision fast because that's how they make money. Fortunately for this proposal, the developer and the Planning Commission understood well that a project like this takes time, and it's okay that it takes time to review because we want to make sure we get it right. And so since the application was submitted last January, the proposal has undergone much review with staff and the Planning Commission, as well as many residents and members of the public. And we feel it's ready to bring to you for a decision today. To give you an overview, there are 3 development areas in this proposal. This area to the north is called Eagle Crest. In the middle here is called the Exchange. And then down here to the south is called Kobe Branch. Let's see. To give you, let me back up a little bit to give you some history on the project. The Ogden Valley Planning Commission, after the initial public hearing last fall, I guess it was actually last summer, the Planning Commission held a meeting in October of last year where they forwarded a positive recommendation, a unanimous positive recommendation to the county commissioners for approval of the project. Now, I want to make sure I clearly state what their findings were, so I'm going to read those to you if that's okay. The Ogden Valley Planning Commission findings in their unanimous recommendation for approval were listed as follows. 1, the proposal implements a meaningful element from the general plan, specifically the transfer of density rights and providing important public street connections that allow for pedestrian and vehicle connectivity. 2, second finding from the Planning Commission, the proposal was considered by the legislative body in conformance with the Land Use Code. 3, the third and final finding of the Planning Commission was that the applicant prefers to move the townhomes in the Kobe Branch area to the south so that the single-family lots are closer to the northern boundary in the Kobe Branch area. And I'll explain that as I go over the Kobe area with you. We talked a little bit about MPD overlay zone. So just so it's clear, I want to describe the purpose and intent of the MPD overlay zone. So it is not necessarily rezoning property to a new zone, but it is applying an overlay zone over top of the existing zoning. In the Land Use Code, here's how we describe the purpose and intent of MPD overlay. It's intended to allow a legislatively adopted overlay zone that provides an avenue for the creation of a master planned development. The zone is intended to promote the diversification in the relationship of various uses and structures to their sites, to permit more flexibility, to permit more flexible applicability of traditional zoning standards to those sites, and to encourage new and innovative concepts to the design of neighborhood and housing projects. So just to, I guess, to kind of recap, the developer's got certain underlying zones that you've read in the description. There's AV3, FR3, F5, several others. But the developer would like to use this MPD overlay tool to be able to have a little bit of flexibility in what those zones allow. As with any rezone, there are some recommended conditions, or considerations that the legislative body can make. These are all listed in the Land Use Code. I'm sure you're all familiar with them from the rezones that have happened recently. And I won't read these word for word, but some of the considerations that you can make and that the Planning Commission made were whether or not the proposal is compatible with the existing development in the surrounding area. Another one is whether or not you think the proposal will adversely affect this property or any adjacent properties. The next one down is if you feel that the proposal will or has the ability to degrade any natural or ecological resources in this area. And another one, second to last one here, is if there are traffic mitigation plans that are requested or submitted at a rezone level, consider those. You may consider those and whether or not you think it will cause our public streets and roads and corridors to diminish below an acceptable level of service. One of the other last listed consideration is existing facilities and services in the area when it comes to police and fire and schools and wastewater. Those are all considerations that you can make and that the Planning Commission made. Now, I will mention, at least from my point of view on these considerations, they should be made at a rezone level, but we get into a lot more detail at a subdivision level on a lot of these things, where we make sure that the developer has adequate water and sewer service before they can even plat lots. And we often request traffic studies to make sure that we know what kind of upgrades need to be made to roads because of these developments. So I'm going to move on to this first development area that I talked about, which is Eagle Crest. There are approximately 60 acres in this Eagle Crest area. You can see on the left is the existing zoning. It's vacant property. You can see there's some RE20 zoning and some FR3 zoning there currently. The developer is proposing townhomes and condominium units with around 40 acres of open space and trails surrounding those units. You can see here that there are 12 10-plex buildings, which means that there's 120 condo units, and there's also 18 4-plex buildings proposed, which would be 72 townhomes. And then this next slide shows you just a little more zoomed in on how that looks there. One thing I'll mention, an important thing to note, with this entire proposal to rezone MPD overlay, there is no new density being proposed. The developer is not asking the commission to give them any more density rights than they currently have. What they are proposing to do is take their existing number of units that they have through the Wolf Creek Development Agreement and through some zoning that they have, and to disperse those through each of these development areas. I know I've gone over that in pretty great detail with the commission in work session, as well as with the Planning Commission in public hearing. I can, if you'd like, I can get into that level of detail, but I won't unless you ask me to specify where each of those units are coming from. Just know they're coming from existing zoning, existing development rights that the developer currently has. The next development area is called the Exchange. We're looking at about 6 to 8 acres is the property on the left. You can see what the current zoning is. On the right, you can see what the proposal is. I should have oriented this picture on the right a little bit because north is kind of to the
Upper left.
Yeah, they're to the left. But you can see, let's see, in this image, you can see what the developer is proposing with the Exchange. which is their concept plan on the right there. Here you can see the proposed residential units, which include 8 10-plex buildings, which ends up being about 80. It is 80 condo units, and then there's also 4 16-plex buildings, which is another 64 condo units. The exchange that we're looking at is the only development area in this entire proposal that will have commercial uses. You can see on this image where the hotel and retail buildings will be are proposed. This is just an image that shows where those density rights are coming from.
Go back one slide, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
The last area, the last development area is called, the developer calls Kobe Branch. There is approximately 180 acres. You can see on the left what the current zoning is, and on the right what the proposal includes. I'll show you a little bit more zoomed in of a picture. I asked just a few minutes before the meeting for a clearer image from the developer, and I should have asked him earlier, but I think you can get a pretty good idea of what this is going to look like from this image. Through the Planning Commission hearings, the developer decided to move the townhomes, you can see kind of in the central location. They were originally proposed up towards the Trappers Ridge development. The Trappers Ridge folks requested that the developer move those down, and the Planning Commission, that was a big reason why they supported this proposal, is because they were moved down at the request of Trappers Ridge, and the developer is placing those single-family lots closer to the north there. So you can see, let's see here. There are 33 single-family dwelling lots ranging in size from 2 to 3 acres. The developer is also proposing 17 fourplex buildings, which is 68 townhome units, for a total of 101 dwelling units in the Kobe area. Another thing that came up with the Planning Commission that you're aware of is there was a request to put a crash gate, an emergency gate, so that this access isn't used up into the Trappers Ridge development until such time that the county says it's necessary. There was some concern from those residents in that area that there would be too much traffic through the Trappers area, but as staff, we wanted to make sure that that connection was made, because we understand how important it is to have a secondary egress out for those folks. I know a few years ago I believe there was a gas leak in this area, and there were some complaints about not having a second way out, and that's just a perfect example of why we need a second public street out. One thing that's nice with Kobe is there will be a 10-foot paved pathway that you're familiar with along the public street, and it will actually, about halfway down, it will turn into access through just some, they will be public, but they will be trails along the open space, and there will be more, they won't be 10-foot wide, but they will be probably 5 feet wide, 5 or 6 feet wide, and that will provide some pedestrian connectivity. We've written into the development agreement also, I just want to mention actually I'll get to that in a little bit. Here's the slide that explains where the development rights are coming from in the Kobe Ranch area. Short-term rentals, this is a big thing to talk about. It came up a lot with the Planning Commission. So with an MPD overlay zone, it gives the commission the ability to grant the use of short-term rentals in a development in a master plan community such as this. The short-term rental allowance, it says that the development is allowed short-term rentals if the legislative body determines that the proposed STR use substantially advances a general plan, goal, principle, and implementation strategy. I know the Planning Commission talked about that, and they felt that it did, and so they were comfortable with short-term rentals as proposed on this screen here. Now I'll mention in Eagle Crest, that first development area that we looked at, there was a request from residents that there be no short-term rentals allowed. The developer was willing to grant that request, and so we've actually written it into the proposed development agreement that there will be no short-term rentals in any. Go ahead.
Eagle Crest. Eagle Quest.
I should call it that, yes, yeah, it's an Eagle Quest. They've proposed to prohibit short-term rentals totally in Eagle Crest. They are proposing short-term rentals in the multifamily and townhome units in that exchange, that commercial project we looked at, and they're also proposing short-term rentals be allowed in the Kobe Branch area in both the single-family lots and the townhomes. One thing I'll point out, I want to make sure I point out this slide because the MPD overlay ordinance talks about, it wants to make sure that no new density is granted through MPD overlay zone. And I want to reiterate that there is no new density being requested and there's no new density proposed to be granted at this point. I've included this slide to show you that an MPD overlay zone can be a receiving area for transferable development rights as well. And that is what the developer's proposing. They're proposing to buy a certain number of development rights and to transfer them to this area before they're able to plat them, and the development agreement specifies how they'll do that. Okay, a few more slides I wanted to go over with you. This is a map from the general plan and a few quotes from the Ogden Valley General Plan as it relates to this project. Now, I've circled the general location of this development on the Ogden Valley open lands map of the general plan. And you can see the preservation of open space. Most of it in this project is in the Kobe Ranch area. This map is intended to highlight the open lands that should remain open, is what the general plan says. Keep these lands open when you can. Now, something that was discussed with the Planning Commission was that the developer he's not preserving all of this land as open space. And I don't know that the general plan would expect him to. But something that was talked about with the Planning Commission was, is it better to have the proposed 13 acres of open space from Kobe Branch with cluster-style development, or is it better to have the whole project develop out as 3 and 5 acre lots? And if you ask me, my opinion is get some open space where you can and cluster those development rights together so that you can have some open space for the enjoyment of the public. It can include trails. It's also visual open space that the general plan talks about. Something to note, when looking at smart growth principles that we as planners are looking at constantly, one of the things we've noticed, a few of the things we've noticed with this proposal is that there is, like I just talked about, there are some open space preservation concessions that the developers made. We're talking about 13 acres in Kobe. We're talking about 39 acres in Eagle Crest with trails. It's open to the public. We're also looking at street connectivity. I talked about some of those important connections made up into Trappers Ridge, but also there's a connection out west through Eagle Crest to 4100 North, which is a critical connection that this developer would make with this proposal, so that there's a connection into Liberty in that Wolf Creek area. I think this is, last two slides, I think. We prepared a development agreement, as we often do with rezones. What this development agreement does is it captures a few things that we've talked to and that the developers agreed upon, which is, for example, the concept plans. We know generally what each of these development areas will look like and will build out as. It also provides a timeline for this development to take place. It's 15 years. They have 15 years to develop it. We list the specific uses that are allowed. For example, we talk about where short-term rentals are and aren't allowed. And a couple other things. It also talks about this crash gate. It gives the county the sole discretion on removing that crash gate, and it puts the maintenance on the HOA of Kobe to maintain that crash gate. Some actions you can take with a rezone that you're familiar with. You can approve the proposal if you feel it meets your objective findings, or if you feel that it complies with the general plan. You can deny a rezone if you feel it doesn't comply with the general plan, or if you have some other findings, like maybe the timing isn't right. That's a reason could be a reason to deny a rezone. You can also table and ask us for more information. I gave you the Planning Commission recommendation, which was for approval, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any for right now.
Great. Any questions currently, Commissioner Bullos?
Oh, just a comment. I appreciate your work with the Planning Commission in resolving their concerns and thorough detail to this agreement. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. you're presenting to us several scenarios here. Are all of those proposals, well, first question for me, are all those proposals that presented today, or did they all have a unanimous recommendation by the Planning Commission?
They did, yep. It was submitted as a kind of a package. The developer basically said, I want the MPD overlay zone on Eagle Crest, Exchange, and Kobe, and we took all of that to the Planning Commission. And yes, their recommendation was for all three of these.
Staff recommendation.
Is for approval based on the Planning Commission recommendation.
Very good, thank you. No other questions? All right, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Burton.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is by Felix Yavarino. Felix, this is a public hearing on an ordinance and development agreement to rezone 29.61 acres from the agricultural A1 zone to the residential R115 zone. The approximate location is 4300 west and 1800 south. CMA is 2023-03. Go ahead, Felix.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I just want to, let me quickly open up this, I was kind of daydreaming there for a minute, so forgive me. Let me get this PowerPoint open. So, yeah, what we have before you is a request from the developer to rezone some property out on Western Weber. The location of this is 4300 west and 1800 south. And the current zoning there is A1. And the request is to change the zoning from A1 to RE15. Let me see if this is going to, okay, good. With this rezone request, it would involve amending the zoning map and what initiates this rezone is the ordinance that is also part of this presentation, this packet. And with this rezone, there's also a development agreement. And the development agreement kind of lays out some specifics that are unique to just this development. And this request is to, it includes an area that is 29.61 acres. And the with a rezone, it would actually bring the lot sizes, the potential lot sizes down to 15,000 square feet, no smaller than that. And in this case, what they've done is they've included a road concept plan with some trails, and I'll include that so with the slide here. So here's a map showing the general location, and you can see the area in yellow that it occupies. And here's the concept plan. And what I've done here is just to kind of highlight some of the amenities that are part of. And some of these will actually help to qualify it under the smart growth principles. You can see those black lines that are adjacent to the street, the black dashed lines. And those are called street adjacent pathways. And that's a 10-foot pathway. And then you have also some mid-block pathway crossings, and those are 15-foot pathways. There's one there through that block that's labeled Phase 2, and then you also have a mid-block crossing there on the south edge, and you also have another mid-block that's more closer to the west edge of the property. Then you also have that 15-foot entry, the pathway entry. Planning felt that that's a good location for the attraction that's in the area, which is the Walker Slough. Obviously, it's not built yet, but we would like to, with further construction and development, when we have more development proposals in this area, that's something that the county is very interested in. This Walker Slough can become a pretty attractive areas for pedestrians and cyclists. And so this concept plan that we're looking at here, this mainly shows the street layouts, and it also shows the pathway layouts and how they connect and relate to the adjacent developments that exist. And also some of the planned developments that haven't come into yet. So for instance, Anselmi Acres and that's kind of to the northeast of this property. And going to the next slide, this was presented to the Planning Commission on July 11th, and the Planning Commission gave a unanimous recommendation for approval. And what we've included here is the recommendation that came from the Planning Commission here. So, and these things also that I'll walk through are also included with the development agreement. So that the concept plan include a 15-foot pathway entry point, which we've got that taken care of on the concept as we talked about, and the number of lots, basically the density that's part of this for the R1 15 zone. And there's also an allowance in the development agreement that facilitates the option for lots that are over 20,000 square feet. They can actually take advantage of the ag uses in the RE 15 zone. Still pretty small scale, but ag nonetheless. That's something that the developer would like to pursue. And that the final layout and street infrastructure, and this even includes the road cross sections, because right here we're dealing with multiple cross sections that range from 60 feet wide right of way all the way up to 80-foot wide right of ways. And then also, in order to make safe road crossings, particularly on 4300 West, because it's an 80-foot right of way, there's potential for that to be a pretty busy road. Planning staff got together, thought, with the developer's approval, of course, and to make sure that there's a safe crossing, which hence the push button activated crossing. And that street trees, and that's pretty standard with some of these smart growth. It actually helps to line the streets and helps to a more appealing roadscape. And that also the where you have pathways, there's some area on both sides of the pathway that are landscaped. And you also have parking strips, and it's also important to have those maintained with some durable ground covering. In this case, 6-inch angular rock or some other covering that is acceptable by the planning division and the engineering. And also that this will kind of help conserve water. And so landscaping in this residential area, it's important that each person in this development follows a landscape guide. That landscape guide is something that's been put together by the developer and reviewed by us, the planning division. But in order to enforce that, that's where the HOA comes into play. So the developer is going to make sure that that's also part of the HOA documents. This item in red, I put this in there because this is something that we wanted to make sure the contribution to the Parks District from these developers is done before we get too far along the road. We want to make sure that the Parks District gets what was agreed upon by the developer before we record the plat. And so that's kind of what I have to present today, and planning staff's recommendation is for approval of this rezone with approval of the ordinance and the development agreement. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions, Commissioner?
No, thank you again for your work on this and the detail and working with the Planning Commission, and I appreciate your adherence to the general plan. That's important to me.
Thank you.
I'll have some questions after public comment.
Great.
Thank you. Now's the time on item H5 for public comments on any of the items presented. Again, in review, the items presented pertaining to the 2023 calendar budget. The next item was the one presented in the Ogden Upper Valley by Mr. Burton, and then the one we have just heard in the Western Weber area by Felix Yavarino. Now's your time if you're in the galley or the area or online for public comments. Please limit those comments to the specific item you wish to talk about, and limit those items to 3 minutes. Any online, Shelley? No. Okay. Any in the House or in the chamber? Seeing none, I'm going to move off of public comments. Commissioner, I'm requesting a motion to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene a public meeting.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great. We're now back into a public hearing. Excuse me, a public meeting. Item number H2 is a request for approval of Resolution 37-2023, amending the operating and capital budget for Weber County for the 2023 calendar year.
Motion to approve Resolution 37-2023.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. I'll second that motion. And if there's no more discussion, I'll place that motion for vote. Mr. Brandt?
Roll call vote for Resolution 37-2023. Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number H3 is a request for approval of an ordinance 2023-25 and development agreement to apply a master planned development overlay zone on 257 acres on the property zoned RE15, RE20, FR3, F5, CVR1, and AV3. The project located near 3718 North and Wolf Creek Drive in Eden. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 2023-25.
Second that motion. Roll call vote. Mr. Brandt.
Roll call vote for ordinance 2023-25. Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number H4, a little discussion. Mr. Yavarino, if you'd come back to the lectern, please. This item that you're preparing today, can you tell me, it may have been a work session that I wasn't present at, but I don't remember this coming before us in a work session. When did that happen?
So it happened last Monday. It was pretty brief. It was between, it was very brief. It was only about a 10-minute discussion. I just handed out a couple maps, and we just, talked about.
That was when I was at the doctor. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we talked about density.
Likely. Okay. Very good. And the Planning Commission on this one, Mr. Yavarino?
Yes, positive recommendation, unanimous.
Unanimous, and so it's unanimous there. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Yavarino.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Commissioner, looking for a motion?
A motion to approve ordinance 2023-26.
I'll second that motion. Place that motion for vote. Mr. Bratt?
Roll call vote for ordinance 2023-26. Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our public hearing today. Madam Commissioner, we need to go into a closed session to discuss eminent litigation, purchase of property, and/or
Commissioners,
not on the new one.
if you want, I would be happy to state the reason.
That would be great.
So, the purpose of the closed session would be to go into discuss for a discussion of the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of And this one, I would say individuals.
I've got that here, Shelley, thank you. So that'll entertain a motion, go into closed session.
So moved.
Second, a roll call vote on going into closed session, isn't it? It is, thank you, Chris. Go into closed session.
It's a roll call for a closed session? Okay. Roll call vote for a closed session. Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye, thank you. We'll be going into closed session. For those who'd like to wait, we'll come back and, after a closed session, do commissioner comments, and then we'll adjourn the meeting, but it'll be after closed session. Those who have been invited to attend the closed session, so, thank you, Shelley, for this. I see it now. You've got the recording going over there? Okay, great. We're now, I'd entertain a motion to leave our closed session and reopen our commission meeting.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll go to commissioner comments. Any comments? By the way, there was no action taken during that closed session. Commissioner comments?
None.
None here either. Entertain a motion for item J.
Move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks.